Okay, so in the next couple of weeks, we're going to create a financial plan. We're going to do a personal budget, but we're going to do a financial plan. We all need a financial plan. You will need that throughout your life in order to stay on track and to be successful in your finances. And it's very important to do that. So in order to have a plan, you need some things that you want to accomplish. So we're going to look at goals. So there are long-term goals and there are short-term goals. So we've talked about this in a couple of the previous units. So short-term goals are anything that you are able to complete in a year or less. If it's something that's going to take you longer than a year to 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years even, then that is a long-term goal. So we need some short-term goals and we need some long-term goals. You need to have financial goals. You need to have academic goals. You're a student, so you need some academic goals. And we also need some personal goals. And we need some short-term and some long-term of each of these. So we're going to be working on all of this, but in the beginning we're going to work on some financial goals. In order to create our financial plan, we need some financial goals. We need some short-term and we need some long-term. And some of your goals are going to be different. I have some financial goals. My short-term is maybe retirement. That might be a long-term goal for you guys. So we're going to look at some strategies on how we're going to make these goals, because it's going to be a process of how we're going to put them on paper so that we're going to build our financial plan around those goals. So in order for goals to be effective, we're going to use a strategy and it's an acronym called SMART, S-M-A-R-T. Which we all are, right? Everybody in this room is smart. So we're going to use that acronym in creating our goals. So what this stands for is, the S stands for specific. So specific means it needs to be sensible, significant. It needs to be specific. So in other words, you can't just say, I'm going to save money. That's not specific at all. So specific would be, I'm going to save $100 by the end of the month in order to buy my girlfriend a present. That's a specific short-term goal, right? So it needs to be measurable. You need to be able to measure the progress of that goal. The A stands for achievable. You don't want to set a goal that you can't achieve. So you don't want to say, I'm going to save $10,000 by the end of the month, because the truth of the matter is that's probably not achievable for most of us, for any of us really. And then it needs to be relevant. So it needs to be reasonable, something that is important to you, something that is worthwhile for you. It needs to be relevant to you. It also needs to be time-bound. You can't set a goal and not have a deadline. So you need to say, I'm going to save $100, if that is your short-term goal, by the end of the month, by December 31st, 2020, etc. It needs to be time-bound. So we're going to look at what each one of these in detail. So specific means your goal should be clear and specific. Otherwise, you won't be able to focus your efforts or feel truly motivated to achieve it. So it needs to be specific. So it needs to ask these W questions. What do I want to accomplish? Why is this goal important? Who is involved? Where is it located? Which resources or limits are involved? And we have an example here, and this is an example of someone that's currently a marketing executive at a firm, but his goal is that he'd like to become head of marketing. So a specific goal in this situation would be, I want to gain the skills and experience necessary to become head of marketing within my organization so that I can build my career and lead a successful team. So this is very specific. And then it needs to be measurable. So you need to be able to track your progress. So if you're saving money, maybe tracking your progress is looking at your savings account and updating that, knowing where you are at any given time during this time frame of your goal. So some questions that you should ask is how much, how many, how will I know when it is accomplished? How will you know when you get this goal accomplished? So it needs to be measurable. It also needs to be achievable. Your goal needs to be realistic and attainable to be successful. So you need to stretch yourself a little bit and make a goal that is not so easy that you know you've already done it, but it should be something that stretches yourself, but it should be attainable, something achievable. You know, how realistic is the goal? Is it based on other constraints? You know, how am I going, is it something that I can do? It needs to be achievable. Then it also needs to be relative. So is it worthwhile to you? Is this something that will give you that sense of accomplishment? Something that is going to make you a better student, a better at what what your goal is. Is this something that is important to you? Relevant. It needs to be relevant. And it also needs to be time bound. So a goal is not going to be smart unless you have a time limit on it. You need to have a deadline. I'm going to achieve this goal by this time. If something happens in between and you start measuring that and you realize that you've set the time too short or too long, you can adjust that. But you need to have a time stamp on it. You need to know when, have an idea, and have it on paper when you're going to achieve this. So all very important things. So all of these things is the SMART acronym. That strategy is how we're going to develop our goals. And we're going to spend some time going through and developing our financial goals. We're going to develop some academic goals, and we're going to develop some personal goals as well. All very important. And so then we're going to use this acronym SMART. S is for specific. It needs to be specific. It needs to be measurable. It needs to be achievable. It needs to be relevant, and it needs to be time bound. So we're going to start on that in the next few days and work on some goals. But this is how we're going to do this. We're going to use the SMART, S-M-A-R-T acronym and that strategy on developing our goals.